Okay. From the moment Harry Clark stepped onto our screens in the Traitors UK, he drew us in. There's something quietly magnetic about Harry, a mix of sharp intuition, calm confidence, and that disarming charm that makes you want to trust him instantly, even when you know he's a traitor. He navigates tension and uncertainty with a composure that feels almost effortless, subtly drawing people in. But it's in Pilgrimage where we begin to see the depth of who Harry Clark is. Away from the strategy and suspicion, there's a warmth and openness that shines through, an ability to connect, to reflect, and to embrace the journey, not just physically, but emotionally too. He brings a sincerity that feels rare, approaching each experience with thoughtfulness and a willingness to grow. What makes Harry so compelling across both shows is that balance, the clever, perceptive player and the grounded, genuine individual. He's as engaging in moments of quiet reflection as he is in high-stakes drama, and that duality is what makes him truly unforgettable. And now he embarks on a new adventure, a tenacious mission to meet the Pope. And from what we know about him, I think he'll succeed. But why did he want to meet him? And what was he hoping to gain from the experience? Harry joins us on the RE podcast to tell us more. Welcome, Harry.
Wow. That's probably the best intro I've ever had, I think.
I have to say, this is a little podcast, the RE podcast with a big heart, but we're such fans of you in the RE community.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
We followed you since Traitors. We all watched your Pilgrimage series together and we did a live tweet along. And you just seem to embody so many of the qualities that we really appreciate as a community. So kindness and curiosity, tenacity and authenticity. So it's such a pleasure to have you on this podcast.
Thank you.
So just talk to us about your upbringing. Sort of how were you taught these qualities that you seem to embody?
Yeah, I think it's funny you asked that question because it's a bit of a weird one because it's I don't actually know. I'm just sort of Harry. Like just being Harry is where it comes from. But I think obviously I've had a few life experiences, quite a few for only a 25-year-old. I've been through quite a bit. Obviously, I left school at 16, joined the army, and had 6 years, nearly 7 years experience being in the forces. And then obviously my life was changed when it came to Traitors. But it was like a battle. I always say faith is like a wave, like faith came and went and it was stronger and it's weaker and it still is today. I think that's a normal relationship that everyone has with faith. And I think it's lovely that I've now been given the opportunity to sort of portray my faith and show how it helps me and it helps me be a better person. Because like you said, this show, I went through a lot. But it's a simple fact of, I'll tell anyone that I would rather spend my life believing in faith and be wrong. I'd rather spend 90 to 100 years believing and be wrong than spend 90 to 100 years not believing and be wrong. I know that doesn't sort of make sense, but it does to me. And it's like, actually, I'd rather spend my life, like I say to everyone, if I was to die tomorrow, obviously touch wood, it doesn't happen, and there wasn't a God and there wasn't heaven, there wasn't what I believe in. If someone then gave me the opportunity and said, oh, I bet you regret your life now believing and it's just a waste of time, I'd turn around and hand on heart say, no, I don't regret it at all, because I don't only believe because of how it helps me mentally. I believe because of the person it makes me be. It gives me, it teaches me how to be kind. It teaches me how to respect others. Love thy neighbor as I've loved you. And it's a simple fact of I'd rather live my life, and if I've only got one shot at it, being the best version of myself, than live my life being a horrible person. And that's honestly just comes from faith. And again, I mean, now it's like my new show coming out, Harry Clark Goes to Rome. I take my mum. And it all simply starts with my mum. She was the idol in my faith journey, and she was the one who took us all to church when we were kids. And it was funny because when I was a kid, it was very much so I'd go to church to not make her disappointed and make her happy. But when I went through a hard time in my life, which we can touch on as well, when I was in the army, it was my mum that I always say was my angel, because all she told me to do was just praying. And that's when things started to get better.
Harry, you've done that brilliant thing of not realizing how genius you are, because what you described at the beginning was something called Pascal's wager, which is what like a famous philosopher said years ago, which is if you're putting a bet on, if you believe in God and you're wrong, you'll be fine. If you believe in God and you're right, you've got eternity sorted. If you don't believe in God and you're right, doesn't matter. If you don't believe in God and you're wrong, you're kind of screwed for eternity. So actually, if you're a betting person, it's much better to bet on the belief in God, even if you're wrong, because you're going to be okay either way. So, and I think that's what we love about you. You mentioned
and it's also like, but like with that whole thing as well, it's like, well, if I didn't believe in God, then what's the point in any of this? Like I see it. I know that sounds so silly of me to say to people who might be out there and not believe, but it's like, well, what is the point in this life then? You know, why do we wake up? Why do we go to work if there's nothing else? If like, what is our reason of being here? And like the best way I love to explain faith is like love. You know, it's that thing that you can't see, you just feel. Like you
Hmm.
can't describe what love is, just like you can't describe what faith is. But when you have it in your life, just like love, it makes it a whole lot better. So it's also like, well, what's the point in any of this? Like I would just wake up sad every day if I just thought I'd die and that's it.
Yeah,
Like what's the point? You
yeah.
know, so it's like I like to believe for that reason too.
Yeah, I had that exact experience when I was in year 9. I remember it clearly. I was in an art lesson and I was like, and I kind of converted myself to believing in God. Because I was like, if there is no God, there's no purpose to any of this. Because you just kind of go to school and you learn, and then you get an exam, and then you get a job, and then you earn money to buy stuff, and then you die. And that just felt pointless to me. And interestingly, I now don't believe in God. And I've had to kind of create, kind of think about what's the purpose of life then if there is no ultimate purpose. But actually, I think it's human nature to try and find meaning out of things. And for me, because there's nothing else, there's so much purpose to life because this is it. And I get to make the most positive, hopefully, the most positive influence on this world to make it a little bit better. And that for me is a very fulfilling purpose. So I think, what we share is that need to have purpose and an understanding. You touched there just on some of the difficult times you went through during the army, and you said you were happy to talk about that. So
Yeah.
just let us know what happened.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I was a kid in a man's world and you grow up very quickly, but you get to see you're obviously exposed to what man can do to man or what people can actually do to themselves. And I think that hurt me more because I lost quite a few friends who lost the battle in their own mind, which was harder to deal with because you're trained for war. But when they're losing the war in their mind, then it's a bit like, oh, why did you not just speak to me one more time? Or I could have helped you, you know? And you see all that stuff. And then I went for a period in my life where I was deployed for, say, 18 months. So I'd been home for like a couple weeks here and there, but which was just split up 18 months. At the same time, this was when I was 20 years old. At the same time, this was when my faith was at its weakest because it was like, no, you know, why do bad things happen to good people? There can't be a God if all of this hate and evil was around, you know, because then if he's so amazing or loving, then surely he would just get rid of it all. And obviously I'd believed in him my whole life. So it was like, why do I feel like this way? Then at that time I was deployed. I lost my partner who I was with for like 7 years. And, you know, first heartbreak, you feel like no one's ever going to love you again. At the same time, I was then like called back from deployment. So it was like my job was like, well, what does this mean for me? At the same time, I had kidney stones for the second time. So I was in and out of hospital. Then as I came out of hospital, I was like, can't get much worse. Then I was jumped, lost my 2 front teeth. They tried taking my ear. I had a bleed on the brain. So like it was told I was never going to be able to box again. So at this time, and that was all I ever knew, boxing, sports. So like it was literally as if life just couldn't get any worse. And it was, why is this happening to me, you know? And that's where I say, you know, I was waking up then every day, having a coffee, cigarettes, whatever it was, just destroying my body, had no self-confidence. I'd shot up to about 100 kilos. And funny enough, you know, it was good for me because of the family I have. And like my brothers, my dad, you know, they're very strong men, which was what I needed in my life at the time. You know, they told me to sort of fix my act up. You know, it wasn't very lovey-dovey where I could just cry, which I appreciated because it was like, yeah, actually, I do need to sort myself out. And then that's when I went to my mum and I sort of went to my mum and said, you know, I've used up all my resources. Like I'm a burden on everyone else. I don't want to be here anymore. And she was just simply like, well, what's the one thing you know how to do? Just pray. And it was funny because I say like, this is where I say as well, at the end of the day, I obviously, it's hard to explain, but it's like, I love God and I believe in God truly, but actually I don't really care about like if there is someone else because I see it as my meditation. It's what saved me. Some people who won't believe will see it as meditation because that's when I started praying. And funny enough, you know, like I say, it didn't happen like a switch overnight. It was like, oh, I found God and I'm saved. I remember I used to set an alarm on my phone, and this is where I sort of, like you said, where did the abilities come from? It was probably this period in my life because I'd set an alarm and I'd allow myself like an hour to be annoyed with God. I'd be effing and blinding at him like, you're obviously not real. You've done this, you've done that. You know, I hate you, blah, blah, blah. Then when my phone would ding, it'd be like, okay, have I got anywhere from doing that? Like, am I happier? No, not at all. If anything, I'm more angry. But then it's also like we said, how special life is. So why am I wasting any more time being angry? So then it was like, okay, then my prayer starts shifting. And this is where I say it was a shift as a whole, because I no longer pray to be a millionaire or for Father Christmas to bring me the mountain bike at Christmas time. I just started praying thanks, and it was thanks and for strength. So it was, you know, actually, even though I'm this angry, thank you for allowing me to sit on the end of a bed under a roof. Thank you for even the simple fact of if I want to go downstairs and grab a glass of water, I can. And then what I started doing subconsciously was realizing actually I'm better off than millions around the world, millions who have to fight every day just to stay alive and have food and have water. And I've got them the basic necessities, and how selfish of me to take that for granted and feel like my world's ending when actually I don't really know what true pain is, because there's other people out there who's a lot worse than me. So what I was doing subconsciously then was building up how grateful I was for just the simple things around me, which made me smile every day. My family, my loved ones, my brothers, my sisters, my mum and dad. And then after that, I would just pray for strength, clear mind, help me get to my sister's birthday, in January, help me get to this next checkpoint. And then that's how my prayers changed. And then that's how life just got better. And then in the January, I made it to my sister's birthday. Then after that, I was allowed to box again. I was a coach, so I boxed a boxing team instead of having to box. And then luckily, I actually got clearance to box. I don't know how, but that was the last time I boxed, and I won that tournament. So it was like, okay, I'd sorted myself out both physically and mentally, and then life just went on from there. But I feel like that was what had saved me at that point, because it made me realize how special the things were in life to me then. So actually, no matter what I do now, how much money I make, and obviously everyone loves making money, or what I can buy and what I can afford, I've already found the things that have meaning to me in my life. So I don't actually need anything else. So anything else is just a bonus. Like I always say to anyone, after the Traitors or whatever it is I go on to do, even if I was under a bridge tomorrow, but I had my family with me under that bridge, I'd be just as happy as I am speaking to you today, because I know at least I can wake up with a smile on my face. I'm still healthy. There's millions of people who are in a hospital bed who wish they could be in my position and go out for a run. So I really realized how to value life and what was the meaning to me then, and then I've just carried that on through life now. And like you see, when you see me on TV now, or you see me do things, I give it my all, and I take it with like every opportunity with both hands, because I just live life to the fullest really now, because I've realized what matters to me.
John 10:10, Harry, isn't it? I have come that you might have life, have it to the full. Thank you for sharing that story. It's really beautiful. I think there's a lot I take away from that. One is that almost the balance of your parents, that you've kind of got this, dad who was kind of like, come on, pull yourself together, sort this out. And the mum that sort of just pointed you in the right direction and kind of gave you that hope. And actually that's maybe why you've got such nice balance in your life now, because you've had those kind of parents that have authentically parented you from their experience and what they know. And I think also the importance, whether you believe in God or not, and whether you believe that it's true, the power of gratitude is just incredible. And whoever you direct that gratitude towards, that's proven to have such a positive effect. And it really has on you, that actually that was the one thing you could cling to, is that even in the darkest moments, there was one thing that you could be grateful for. And actually the power of that to kind of change the way that you approach life. And I think that's really beautiful. Has it changed so one thing we teach in the classroom is peace and conflict, and we try and have a look at religious views towards peace and conflict, but most of us haven't experienced that firsthand. And so it's all kind of academic. What's your thoughts on war now? Do you feel it's necessary? Or do you feel...
No, definitely not.
No.
Yeah, it's funny because if you asked me at 16, oh wow, I'd be the first to put my hand. I mean, I was on every deployment I could go on. I'd be the first to put my hand up to go to war, just because I felt like if I go, then my family doesn't need to. So it was like, I'll go, I'll fight for our country, and I'll lay down my life. And now it's just like, well, this is so pointless. And it's funny you asked that question, because when we talk about Harry Clark Goes to Rome, there's that hidden Easter egg at the start. The main thing with this documentary is it's not just a Catholic documentary. It's not just about me, and it's like faith. And like my friends would call me Bible basher. It's not about that, because funny enough, when you see the start of the documentary, you see my loved ones. So it's like you're in my life, it's filmed from my shoulder, where you see where I live, you see the car I drive, you see my loved ones. And actually the little hidden gem that I love to say is, the people around me who you see, my loved ones, Anna, my girlfriend, my best friend, Harry, who I go to the pub with, play darts, my dad, my brothers, they don't have the same beliefs and views that I have.
Yeah.
But funny enough, we still love each other. So if they believe in whatever they believe in, or if they don't believe in God, it doesn't actually matter, because they're the closest people to me. They're who I love and trust. And above all, we love each other. So it's that little hidden Easter egg, because it's like, you'll see in my life, not everyone around me is a Catholic, and I'm not one of them people who go, hi, I'm Harry Clark, I'm a Catholic, just because I'm not like that. It's like, it doesn't. It's just what I live my life side by side with. And if someone wants to talk about it, we can. But if you don't, that's absolutely fine. I don't have any view on you because of what you believe in or what you don't believe in. It doesn't matter to me. And like you'll see in a documentary, it's like, actually, the person who Harry loves most in his life doesn't believe in God or doesn't believe that way, isn't a Catholic. So how come I can still love? And it's the same with the world. Why does everyone have such a problem with each other? Because they don't believe in the same way or they don't think of things the same way. It doesn't make sense to me. So yeah, it's funny that you asked that question because it's only recently it would have changed.
Yeah. And I think, I've only seen like a little clip of it, but it's a human story. And I think that's why a lot of us that love RE and love religion is because we love humans and we love the human story. And it is about you. I mean, you literally ring up the Vatican
Yeah, I
and
know.
ask if you can meet the Pope. And
Then they put the phone down on me.
you.
Yeah.
So actually, I think that it's about that story. But tell us about the importance of the Pope to you. Like, what does he symbolize for you, and why did you want to meet him?
Yeah, it was funny because the story originates from me being on the pilgrimage.
Right.
So when I was on the pilgrimage, there's that part of me and Jay in the bathtub, and we stayed at this hostess's like pilgrim house in the middle of the Alps. And the hostess, bless her, couldn't speak a word of English. She was only German. And, we've done our filming for the night and she's come in and she said, oh, in the winter time, like through Google Translate, because I was using the Google Translate, the technology today. And she basically had told us that in the winter time, her whole farm that's in the valley is covered in snow. So everything has to be gone. And obviously we were there in like, say, September. So everything had to be gone. So she was like, here's my present. And she had home brewed a load of beers. So we're sat there after filming and I'm sat with Tom, who was one of the producers with CTVC.
Yes.
And we're sat there and like guys do, just imagine you're down the pub, but instead we're in a hostess's house, in a pilgrim house in the middle of the Alps, sat next to a horse, sat next to a pig, with a cockerel running along. And we're there having these homebrew beers and he's gone, what do you want to do next? And, I've told him because my mind is firing all the time, especially when I go to bed. It's like, what can I do next? How can I resonate with people? How can I help people? Because that's my only goal in life. And it's like, okay, I had this idea for the army. I had this idea for helping people with mental health problems. I had this idea. Then he said, but as a Catholic, what would you want to do next? Now, the pilgrimage was one of the most amazing experiences I ever had, and it deepened my faith massively, but I still said, like I was a modern Catholic. I didn't really believe necessarily in the church. The church is within. I can be just as close to God sat on the end of my bed as I can be going to church. Then you see like the scandals within the church, and it's like, why would I trust that sort of, that line that doesn't really bother me, I'd say I'm a Catholic, but a modern Catholic. I don't believe the Bible word for word. I just think it's a story that's simplified for us to be able to understand. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense. So I told him all this and he was like, well, how would you change that? I said, you know what? I'll just go to Rome and ask the Pope all these questions. And he sort of nudged me and was like, yeah, all right, mate. But then that was the origins of it.
Yeah.
So that was the origins of it. We just sort of laughed about it. And then I'd worked obviously tirelessly to hopefully get the pilot for the show. And then they was like, you reckon you can actually do it? And I was like, yeah, well, I'll try every route there is. Like I've even sent an Instagram message. I've sent letters, handwritten letters that I haven't sent in ages. I sent emails. I rang the Vatican. So I was like, I would give this my all. And then luckily the BBC took a shot on me with CTVC, and that was the origins. But yeah, I mean, the reason for it, or seeing the Pope, was to ask these hard questions. Has the church modernized? Is there such thing as a good and bad Catholic? Because surely if I drink and smoke all week and go out and sin and then say sorry for it on a Sunday, whereas a priest who's devoted his whole life, surely he's a better Catholic than me. And then at the end of the day, that doesn't really make sense because I could be the worst human being in the world, sin my whole life. And as long as at the end of my life I go, oh God, I'm sorry about that, by the way, then I'm saved. So it's like, what's the actual point in any of this? So it was questions like that. So I have so many gay friends. They believe they're not allowed in the church, and there's such a misconception with that. So it was like, are we all loved by God? Do you have to be a certain type of way to have God in your life? Because if that's true, then, well, I'm definitely not a Catholic because I don't believe it's that way. I believe who are we to judge? And God will love anyone, no matter whether you're gay, bisexual, straight, blue, black, purple, brown, white, it doesn't matter. So it was all of these questions that I had going on in my head. And I just thought, well, who can answer these questions the best? Just like imagine you're in school. If I had a question or if I had a problem, instead of going to the teacher, I'd rather just go to the head teacher. So that was the whole idea of going to Rome to try and ask the Pope these questions.
And I don't want to spoil it for people as to whether you get there and whether you get these answers to these questions. People will have to watch the program. But do you think that you've got any more questions?
I think I've got more questions now than I did before.
So, Harry, I'm going to set you a task. I want you to ask a question and I'm going to put it out to my listeners and we're going to see what answers you get back. So if there's one question you would want to find the answer to that maybe you haven't so far, what would you want it to be?
What, as in, because I quite like the whole good and bad Catholic one.
Yeah.
no matter whether what I've been told or who I've met in Rome, I still believe is there such thing as a good or bad Catholic?
Yeah.
And because the hardest thing is like the deeper I think your faith gets as well, the more Catholic guilt you get. You know, everyone talks about Catholic guilt.
Yeah.
Since I've been back, I've been so guilty. Everything I've done, even if I've said, "Oh my G word," I'm like, oh, I
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
believe I
yeah.
said that. I've just been to Rome. How dare I say that? You know, and it's funny, but it's like I still get that if I go out and I'm drinking or if I do something stupid, it's like, well, surely I'm a bad Catholic compared to someone who devotes their life. But then, is it a scale thing? Is that even a thing, or do people think there's a thing? You know?
Yeah. Do you know what? I always, I was brought up Catholic as well. So yeah, I understand Catholic guilt. And I always look at the person of Jesus because actually he was criticized for not being a good Jewish person. You know, he healed on the Sabbath and he was called a drunkard and a drunkard and a glutton. You know, so he did things that kind of broke what was expected of him as a religious person. And I think that's lovely. And I think the Bible seems to be there's your kind of like, there's one line, it's perfection or you're out. You know, that's the line. But actually, the idea of grace is that that line gets taken away and all are accepted. And there's, who is it that says, if, I think it was Desmond Tutu said, if he goes to heaven and he finds a homophobic God, he wants to go to the other place, you know. So I think, if there is a God, I think God is much more loving than maybe humans have the capacity to understand. And so I think we sometimes put restrictions on God. But I will ask that to my listeners: is there such thing as a good or bad Catholic? And I think that's a really fascinating question. We're really getting a sense of
How come you don't believe in God?
because I think that here's what I think. I love all religions. I couldn't choose one particular one. And so I get inspiration from all of them. And I think I therefore can't confine the concept of God to one religion. And I think that I am agnostic in that I don't think it's possible to know, but I can be inspired by the beliefs of all religions, but I don't subscribe to one of them. I think I got to the point where you were, which was that if there was a God, I don't think this is the world that I would expect to see. There doesn't seem to be anyone in control. You know, and I know that there's free will debate and I know all the ideas, but I just think if there is an all powerful, all loving God, it would be better. And I think it would be easier and I think it would be more just and I think it would be more fair. But that doesn't stop me being inspired by the concept of God. And I'm not so atheistic and dogmatic that I absolutely believe there isn't. But in terms of defining it, I absolutely can't. I think.
So you're kind of like, when I went on the pilgrimage, you're kind of like Deliso. He believes he has that faith. I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically all religions are on the same level.
Yeah. So I think Baha'i sort of
Baha'i, the Baha'i faith. Yeah.
Yeah, because I interviewed Delissa. And I think that's part of it. And I think it's, that little bit that there's this really beautiful story about blind men and elephants. And these blind men had never experienced an elephant before. They'd heard of the elephant. And they go on a mission to try and experience an elephant. And they find this Maharaja who has an elephant and they get to experience the elephant, but they only experience part of it. So one holds onto its tail, one holds onto its leg, one holds onto its trunk, one its tusks, one its ears. And they all describe something very different. It's like a tree. It's like a rope. It's like a spear. It's like a flag.
Yeah.
But they're all right.
Yeah.
But actually, they've only got part of the truth. And I think that's how I feel about humans, is that we only have part of the truth and the real truth is much bigger. And so that sometimes what feels like opposite opinions can actually all be true. And I think there are definite wrongs, but I think there's more than one right. So I think I'm inspired by the concept of God and I'm inspired by religion without defining myself as a believer in any one thing. But I'm open-minded. I'm not so arrogant as to say that I know absolutely either way. I believe in humans. I really genuinely believe in the goodness of most humans. And I believe in love and compassion and kindness and joy and all those things. And I think, so that's probably why. The problem with an RE teacher is you love everything that you teach, you kind of be inspired by that. You talked about sort of your nature in your brain constantly looking for the next thing. What's kind of left on your bucket list?
Cool. How long have you got?
4 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, I actually messaged my manager now, like, what's next? I was like, I've got these ideas. And I mean, again, I've got to be real. It's like a really nervy time for me because Well, it's like hopefully someone watches the show, because if someone doesn't, if
We
no one
will
watches,
be.
no, but if no one watches the show, then nothing's going to come next. I'll be on a building site. But no, I mean, there's so much I want to do, and it's just hopefully, like I say, I'm so grateful for the opportunities I get. So hopefully I get another one. But in my head, I have so many ideas. You know, I want to do something with the army. I want to show that it's not all so bad. Mainly just for people outside of the army who are scared to join, to show that you can do everything and it's good. But also for the people who are in the army and are so close-minded. You know, when I joined at 16, you honestly believe that there's nothing covered in the army. The simple fact of when I left, I could walk over to Costa Coffee and grab a coffee and not have to ask anyone. You know, it was mental to me, because normally in the army, you have to ask your sergeant, who will give you 5 minutes, and then you've got to be over, grab a coffee and come back. You know, you had to have instruction for everything. And it was like, that's crazy. And that's why I feel like people can struggle when they've been in from such a young age, because it's all they ever know. So trying to show them that there's a world outside, trying to show people that it's not that scary, you know, try and show, I've always wanted to do Harry Clark's Toughest Army, because I know what it takes to be in the UK Army, but I don't know what it takes to be in the Norwegian or the Denmark one or the Australian one. So it's like trying to see what their differences are. Not only other than the army, I mean, I've got so many ideas for just me personally. I've never traveled the world. You know, I've never seen the world wonders or whatever they call. I can't eat anything, so trying to like find something I can eat next, because all I survive off is chicken nuggets and chips, because I'm the fussiest eater in the world. So well, now I'm running London Marathon, I'm doing chicken nuggets and rice, so I've ditched the chips. But yeah, so that would be fun.
It feels
But
like
one I
those
also
two
really
ideas
like is,
kind of mesh together. That actually you could travel the world and go to these different places with
yeah,
this
and
army.
try
So
their
that's good. And
traditional
then
food. Like
yeah, yeah.
I wouldn't know what to do with myself eating street food. You know what I mean? I'm just used to my own. I don't change. Like I eat the same breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day. And when I was a kid, I only ever used to eat Weetabix, apparently, with
Oh,
milk
yeah,
or a
yeah,
yogurt. That was it. But yeah, and then in the faith side of things, if people again like and enjoy this documentary, which hopefully they do, because again, like I said, my main reason is I want a Catholic to be able to sit next to a Jewish person, to be able to sit next to a Muslim, to be able to sit next to an atheist, and they all get something from this documentary. That's my hope for it, and I hope people can realize that I'm not a Bible basher, as my mates will call
yeah,
me. You know, like
yeah,
I'm a person for everyone, and I want everyone, like you said. The best thing is, for me, I believe the exact same thing. As long as you've got faith in your life, I don't believe you're wrong. I would never tell you you're wrong. I'd never tell you that you're wrong for not believing. You know, I think it's a story, and we're all just different sides of the story.
yeah,
Everyone's
yeah,
got a
yeah,
different version of it. So yeah, so I would love to move into the Harry Clark, but why am I Catholic? You know, because it's
yeah.
very easy for me to be a Catholic only because my mum put me in church. But
Mm,
what does it look like to live with Jewish people for 2 weeks? What does it look like to go to a synagogue? What does it look like to be a Muslim? You know, what does it look like to live with the Shaolin monks in Thailand? You know,
mm-hmm.
why do they believe? What do they believe in, and why do
Yeah,
they believe in that? So that's kind of an idea I really like as to why am I a Catholic, though? You know, because I haven't
yeah.
tried anything else.
Harry,
So that would be quite cool.
I can promise you that the RE community will be watching you, and there will be a Buddhist and a Jewish person and an atheist and a Catholic
Yeah,
watching, most definitely. And I'm going to recommend a book to you, which is I May Be Wrong. And it's about, I think it's a Danish guy who's like big in finance, makes loads of money, gives everything up and becomes a forest monk. And it's
really.
it's a great book. Just as we go, because it's just the end of our time. If you could wake up tomorrow, Harry, and one thing was different about the world, what would you want it to be?
Well, peace. I mean, that's an easy one for
Mm,
me. Everyone loves each other. Everyone gets on. I mean, I got my little brothers in the army. My cousins are in the army. They've all joined after me, and now I'm out and they're still in. It scares me the way the world's going.
yeah.
So yeah,
It
just
is.
peace, happiness, and love. I think
Yeah.
them three things.
Yeah. Do you know what, Harry? I feel the same way, and many of us, our listeners, will feel the same way. And one thing I have to hold on to is the only thing I can control is how I treat the person that's in front of me in that moment. And if I could be kind to them and peaceful to them and respect them, then actually my world is the way that I want it
It's
to
like
be.
that movie I watched in RE, actually. Pay it forward. You know, as
Yes.
long as you,
Yes.
yeah, that's probably one thing that I remember from my RE classes when I was in school. That was the best movie I've ever watched. You know, as
Yeah.
long as you treat someone with kindness, compassion, and you
Yeah.
help them, then hope
Yeah.
all they need to do is help the person in front of them, and then it goes round.
100%. What a lovely way to end that. Thank you so much, Harry, for your time
No,
today.
thank you
And
for having me.
looking forward to watching Harry Clark Goes to Rome.
Maybe we should have a catch up after it's come out as
Come
well.
on, because this is it. Because I don't know whether you meet him, what he says, anything. So yeah, we'll have a catch up afterwards, and that would be great. Thank you so much.